But first in the news, the Prime Minister of Canada says Wednesday's deadly shootings at the Parliament was a terrorist attack. The government was a recent convert to Islam.
And now Canada and other Western countries are wondering if they can expect more savage terrorism in the days to come. Gary Lane brings us the story.
Canadian police are investigating to determine if 32-year-old Canadian Michael Zahaf Babo acted alone or with others. Wednesday morning, Babo shot and killed Corporal Nathan Cirillo as he stood guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Ottawa. Moments later, he stormed into the Parliament building with a blaze of gunfire before he was shot and killed by the sergeant-at-arms. Investigators now say they believe Babo was from Quebec and was a new convert to Islam. They say his passport was recently seized after he was designated a high-risk traveler. In a televised address to his nation, Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper said the attack was an act of terrorism. He gave a stern warning to other would-be terrorists.
But let there be no misunderstanding. We will not be intimidated. Canada will never be intimidated.
President Obama did not directly call the shooting an act of terrorism, but he assured the public the United States will continue to work with Canada to thwart acts of violence and terrorism.
Our national security teams are coordinating very closely, given not only is Canada one of our closest allies in the world, but there are our neighbors and our friends.
Wednesday's act of Islamic terror in Ottawa came just 2 days after another recent convert to Islam ran over 2 soldiers near Montreal. National security advisors and foreign policy experts on both sides of the border expect there will be more to come.
I would not be surprised at all if there are more in Canada and across the West in general.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
It's shocking, ladies and gentlemen, but let me tell you one more time. Terrorism is at the heart of the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad. It is buried deep into the Quran, and it is there, and these people are not some offshoot. They are carrying out the message of their faith. Well, our CBN News terrorism analyst, Eric Stackelbuck, is with us. And Eric, what is going on? Why Canada?
Well, look, Pat, a few things here. Number one, remember, Canada is a Western nation. Now, a few weeks ago, an ISIS spokesman released an audio tape calling for attacks against Canadian, American, European, and Australian civilians and soldiers. Look, Canada has been part of the coalitions that have fought against Saddam Hussein and fought against jihadists in the Middle East. Pat, they're joining this new coalition against ISIS, so that puts a bullseye on Canada's back, without a doubt. And this is only the beginning, Pat. Really, this is the new normal. We will see more of these lone wolf, self-starter type jihadists strike in Canada, in Europe, God forbid, here in America. I do believe this is a new day with the rise of ISIS. You know, we've had Fort Hood, the Boston bombers, the Times Square bomber over the past few years, Pat. But with the rise of ISIS, it's a new day. So many young Western Muslims and converts are responding to ISIS's call to jihad, and I fear that more and more people, like we saw yesterday, are going to carry out their own self-starter, one-man or one-woman jihad here on Western soil.
Well, Eric, you know, Canada is one of the most welcoming countries to people of various faiths. They have not there's been no provocation whatsoever on the part of Canada against these people.
Yeah, Pat, but it doesn't really matter because the ideology of jihad is all about world conquest. Even if we get the way that some in our administration and others in Europe want, just to leave the jihadists alone, leave them to their devices. Let Iran acquire a nuclear weapon, for example. They won't hit us. We're sadly mistaken to believe that because their ideology, look, Pat, you know this so well, terrorism is only a tactic. It is motivated by a jihadist Islamic ideology, and that ideology calls for global conquest. So it doesn't matter if Canada has never done a thing to any Islamic nation. It doesn't matter if Canada, Britain, the United States are welcoming to Muslim immigrants, allow them to build mosques, throughout their country, it doesn't matter. That only makes the jihadists want to seize their territory more, because at the end of the day, this is about conquest. They are at war with us, and although President Obama may not want to acknowledge it, we are in a war right now, and if we don't understand the ideology of the enemy, Pat, we cannot defeat that enemy. I can assure you they understand us, and they know all of our weak points.
Eric, the FBI, as I understood, took about 1,000 pages out of their terrorism manual identifying these Islamic people as the terrorists, and that was at the direction of the administration. Talk about that.
It was. You know, Pat, this is a shame, too, because since 9/11, so many brave FBI field agents have done such great work breaking up terror plots, apprehending ISIS recruits before they can move overseas. But here's the problem. The FBI bureaucracy and this administration have bowed not only to political correctness, but to Islamist pressure groups. We have these groups here in the U.S., Pat. They are quote-unquote Muslim American civil rights groups. We've exposed them here on CBN News. In reality, these are radical groups that are linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, the granddaddy of all jihadist groups. These groups have a radical agenda, yet they have the ear of the Obama White House. Therefore, we have a situation where the FBI has actually eliminated terrorist training manuals that talk honestly about the caliphate, about jihad, about Islamic radicalism. You can't say the word Islam, Pat. It's only violent extremism these days in the lexicon of this administration. This is a dangerous, dangerous thing, again, because it is willfully misleading the American people. The Obama administration is creating a climate where they're telling the American people, look, we're only at war with al-Qaeda. This is not part of a larger global problem. Well, as we saw yesterday, the barbarians are not just at the gates, they are inside the gates. This is a global problem, and if we continue to refuse to acknowledge it, it's going to continue to bite us. We're going to see a lot more of these lone wolf, self-starter, one-man jihadist attacks on soft targets like we saw yesterday.
You know, in Egypt, there was an overthrow of the Muslim Brotherhood, and al-Sisi took over. He's very much pro-Western and pro-democracy, but he's being portrayed as some kind of a thug. And it looks like the Obama administration wants to embrace the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the founder of Hamas and, the other terrorist groups. What do you think about that?
Pat, it is maddening. I can tell you, I have spoken over the past year to Egyptian officials who shake their head and say, what is your administration doing? I feel like I have to explain the Obama administration, which when it comes to foreign policy is not an easy thing to do. This administration has made a conscious choice to embrace the Muslim Brotherhood. Pat, if they had their chance, the Obama administration, they would push al-Sisi aside. Al-Sisi, who is friendly to the United States, who has had a very good relationship with Israel, they would push him aside and welcome the Muslim Brotherhood back with open arms. This administration believes that the Muslim Brotherhood are the good guys. They are the quote-unquote moderate Islamist, Pat, as if such a thing as a moderate Islamist exists. But they are the moderates in the view of the Obama administration, and we can use the Brotherhood against ISIS and against al-Qaeda, even though the Muslim Brotherhood spawned all of these groups. In the modern era, Pat, all of this jihad starts with the Brotherhood. They are the granddaddy of al-Qaeda, ISIS, and without the Brotherhood, 9/11 would have never happened. Osama bin Laden, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, all of the 9/11 masterminds came out of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the gateway to Islamic terrorism, yet our administration says that they are reasonable chaps who we can deal with.
Eric, thank you for your insightful work. Ladies and gentlemen, this is appalling. We've got a president we can't get rid of for another couple of years, and yet that's why this election coming up is so terribly important. There's got to be some check against this man and what he's doing. But we are destroying, or he is destroying, our credibility. I talked to a newsman yesterday about what's happening in the Middle East, and quietly, very quietly, the Israelis, the Kuwaitis, the Saudis, and the the Egyptians are getting together to try to put together a force against radical Islam, especially against Iran and the nuclear threat, because they understand now that Washington will do nothing. And that's a shame. We are no longer the leader of the free world because of those who run our government, the State Department and the President. Well, in other news, ladies and gentlemen, a Palestinian terrorist has killed an American baby in Jerusalem when this terrorist drove his car into a crowd. Ephraim Grimm has that story from our CBN newsroom. Here's Ephraim.
Pat, Wednesday's terror attack was captured on security camera. The footage showed Abdul Rahman al-Shaluti driving off the road and accelerating as he ran over pedestrians waiting for a train. The 3-month-old baby, as you said, was a girl, an American citizen, and several others were also wounded. The baby's grandfather says her parents tried for years to have a child and had just returned from the Western Wall. She was buried overnight in Jerusalem. The terrorist was shot while trying to flee on foot and later died from his gunshot wounds. On his Facebook page, Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon said the attack is a result of Palestinians teaching the next generation to hate Jews. A well-known meteorologist says there's no scientific evidence for man-made climate change. The British newspaper The Express reports John Coleman, who co-founded the Weather Channel, says what little evidence there is for rising temperatures indicates they come from nature. Coleman says polar ice is increasing, not melting, and heat waves have diminished, not increased. And he writes, I have studied this topic seriously for years. It has become a political and environmental agenda item, but the science is not valid. There is no significant man-made global warming at this time. There has been none in the past, and there is no reason to fear any in the future. Seems like I've heard you say this, Pat.
You've heard exactly that. And ladies and gentlemen, one more time, these guys have an agenda. These climate change gurus, what they're saying, not Coleman, of course, but what the so-called mainstream is saying, we have to have government control over our fossil fuels. We have to have government control of coal. We have to have government control of oil. We have to have government control of manufacturing and certainly of the implements of electric generation, whatever they are. We have to have control of that, and we have to spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars with another bureaucracy. It's all about control. It's socialism. And this business about global warming is nonsense. It has to do, you ask yourself, if global warming is caused by cars, how come Mars is getting hotter? They don't have any SUVs in Mars. The whole thing has to do with the action of the sun, the planets, and so forth. And there are cycles we go through, and there's some warm and some cold. We're going into a cold cycle right now. And we've shown without question the polar ice in the Antarctic is growing dramatically. They have pictures of it growing massively. And we need to take that into account. Ephraim, what do you got?
Well, Pat, you talked about wasteful spending at the top of the show. Those examples are from retiring Senator Tom Coburn's annual Wastebook report. His last study listed 100 examples totaling $25 billion worth of waste, like $10,000 to watch grass grow at a Florida reserve, or $19 million in paid vacations for government workers, about a third of whom were placed on administrative leave for disciplinary reasons, including criminal offenses. $350 million to build a launch pad tower that was scrapped immediately because the rocket it was designed to test had been scrapped years ago. The report also found the State Department used part of its $3 million counterterrorism communication budget to debate terrorists on Twitter. Now, you can find more on the Wastebook, including a special interview at cbnnews.com. Pat?
The inmates have taken over the asylum. It is just incredible. This is madness. You say, how could any rational human being waste money this way? Well, it's not their money. It's your money. It's the taxpayers' money. And yet they put you in jail if you don't pay your taxes. And yet they take your money once it comes in, and there have been record tax receipts, and they're throwing it away and burdening our children and grandchildren with these wasteful schemes. And I appreciate Senator Coburn. He's retiring, I understand, and boy, will the country miss him.
Doctors no longer detect Ebola in a Texas nurse who flew to Ohio and back before she was diagnosed with the virus. 29-year-old Amber Vinson remains in treatment at Emory University Hospital for now as she regains her strength. Her mother says the latest developments have truly answered prayers. A federal judge has ruled there is no constitutional right to same-sex marriage. District Judge Juan Perez Jimenez upheld Puerto Rico's law defining marriage as the union of one man and one woman. Most federal rulings in recent months have gone in the opposite direction, striking down voter-approved marriage laws. But Perez Jimenez disagreed and said, for now, one basic principle remains. The people, acting through their elected representatives, may legitimately regulate marriage by law. Remember, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.